Hello there, Katy. How are you doing today?
Doing great. It's good to see you on the
Yeah,
screen.
great. Finally, huh? Across the
Yes,
time zones.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, for those of you out there that are just listening in, my name is Kinita Schripsema, and I'm the founder and CEO of Seema Global Consulting. And we do leadership training, cultural education, and I'm also a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. And that's why you see my strengths up here on the board behind me. And I have my good friend Katy Kloosterman here from Kloosterman Consulting, and I'm just going to let her tell you a little bit about herself.
And I'm also a Gallup certified strengths coach and own my own business and work with individuals and teams using the Clifton Strengths tool as well as other tools just to help people gain a deeper understanding of who they are and how to be their best selves each day.
Yeah, and it's fun, right, Katy? We've known each other for quite a few years, it feels like, maybe longer, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But every time we get together, we're just on fire, and all of our comments lead to more ideas and more conversations. And I just really love that. And I have to tell everyone how important this is because Katy has been so instrumental in challenging me and pushing me gently. It's probably your responsibility and your woo getting me to become certified. So I did finally, after 13 years of using this tool of Strengths Finder, the Clifton Strengths through Gallup, finally got my certification last year. And so beyond thrilled. It's been so fun as a certified coach, but also just really engaging with people. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being such an inspiration and pushing me in positive ways. I totally see how your strengths did their magic, even in my
I
life.
know. I'm so excited that you're certified now. Now we just
Yeah,
get to
right.
talk even more about strengths.
Love it. Love it. And a collaboration. So, hey, let's talk about our own strengths because usually, if we're talking about our own, then we start to develop how we can kind of share with other people, kind of like
Yeah.
what is the importance of strengths? Maybe you can share on that. And then just let's talk about what are our strengths and how do we get in trouble with them?
Sure. So, well, what I love about strengths is that when we're talking about our strengths or someone else's strengths, it's really about what they do well. And
Mhm.
it's this whole idea of how do we um, discover what we do well and then develop it and do it even better. So if we're in a space where we're working on what we naturally, our natural talents, what we naturally kind of gravitate towards, we're having good days, we're wishing we were doing more of that. The days fly by. So it's just, and you can see why I have positivity, number one. So, it's a good fit. Like,
It is. My connectedness gets me in trouble for that same reason. But
oh,
anyways, go
it's,
ahead.
yeah. So I don't think naturally you would say, oh, positivity, that's a strength that you want to you could use that in the business world. And yet it really does come into play with knowing, like, hey, we're going to make it through this, to be the sort of the cheerleader, to be able to see in stressful situations how they can work out for the good very naturally. Like,
Mhm.
if hard things are happening quite quickly, I will be like, well, it could be worse. Like that thought literally enters my
Yeah.
brain unbidden. But how positivity could get me into trouble is if I share that um, sense too soon with people. You can sometimes then be thought of as like you're Pollyanna, you don't understand the gravity
Mhm.
of the situation. Like, people need time, I think, to kind of wrestle, especially in those difficult situations, and they may not be ready to know out okay. So it
Yeah.
is the message you want to bring, but then the wisdom is sort of knowing, when do I bring that message? So not so much of stifling that positivity, but harnessing it and really thinking about, okay, when's the best time for me to be, and doing, or, giving some hope to the situation.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's so cool. That's great. I appreciate that. I used to think that my responsibility and activator would get me in trouble. And they did, and they sometimes do, but I'm able to really navigate with them because, as we learned in our training, it's about learning what your strengths are. So that awareness piece, and then owning it for ourselves, but then learning to aim it. And once I started to really practice aiming my strengths, then they stop getting me in trouble. So like with my responsibility one, I had to learn for myself to not be responsible for someone, but be responsible to them. And so I practiced my own 2x4 rule in that space. And then I was able to aim it more effectively. And then activator, of course, kind of the troublemaker, because we get these ideas in our heads and I'm ready to roll. But I have to remember to not leave people in the dust. And for those who know me, they're like, oh, yeah, Kinita and her ideas. And she runs forward. So, yeah, that activator piece, right? But recently I've noticed so my husband and I relocated to India 3 years ago and used to live in the US. And so my connectedness is a big troublemaker. It can be a warning sign for me because I'm now in a very highly relational culture. And so relationships are everywhere, right? Which is great. And I can live into that strength. But sometimes I find I'm so tired afterwards. And I've realized that's because the connections are ongoing and they're nonstop. And that opportunity to network and opportunity to connect with folks and connect the dots, and that motor is running constantly. So I have to work on my boundaries a lot more now and make sure that I'm not overdoing it or burning myself out, even with my strengths. So how about yourself?
That is so fascinating because I do think, connectedness is that sort of strength to be able to see the big picture. So for me, connectedness lots of times plays the role almost like a strategic thinking. It's a relationship building strength, but in some of the leadership roles that I've had, that connectedness has been able to sort of, I can see the bigger picture, and then you see how the pieces come together. And but often, because we can do that, we sort of, if you have connectedness, you do see the bigger picture. Not everybody else sees that. So how do you cast the vision for others to bring them along? And I love that you have like I always wish I had higher activator, because I'm like activator, like you get stuff done. Like, so it's a great partnership, because I'm like, I know if I meet with Kinita, we're gonna like actually do something. We're not just gonna talk about it. So I think
it's the action. What's interesting? Many, many years ago, I'm gonna say almost like 29, 30 years ago, a really good friend of ours, she said to me, you know what, Kinita, moss doesn't grow under your feet. And at the time I didn't understand that. I'm like, wait, what does that mean? Does that mean I've got to like chill and sit quiet? Or like, oh yeah, like women, don't be hurt, seen but not hurt kind of moment. Yes. I thought that's what she was saying. And so then I had a good conversation with her and she clarified what she meant. But then until I did my strengths assessment, it gave me language. It's like, hey, guess what? I'm an activator. There is not going to be moss under my feet. It is going to be a path that I walked over and over and over again. So that was really, really helpful. It just gave me language to understand, these relationships more effectively. So how about you? How about woo? Talk to me about woo, because that is one that I feel like, besides you, I think I'm one of the few people in my life that has woo. So what does it stand for? Tell everyone. And then where do you see it play out?
So woo is winning others over. And I think woo kind of has this enthusiasm. Whenever I've gone to the Gallup has a Clifton Strengths Summit in June, you hear the woo people.
Don't want to go.
Like, it's amazing. And it's just kind of the fun part. I often will say I'm a shy woo, because often you will see woo in they describe it often in the through the lens of sales, right?
Right.
Like, you're
I've heard that.
not intimidated to walk into a crowded room and meet new people and all of that. And that is true for me to some extent. But then I will say, like, the power of strengths is it's not the exact same for everyone. So while I love to meet new people and hear new stories, if I'm going to a networking event, I really like to go with somebody I know, almost like your sidekick or wing woman.
Yeah, wing woman. So good call.
It takes the pressure off, right? I mean, because otherwise it feels a little stressful. But at the end of the day, I love hearing new stories. I think Woo helps me as a coach because each coaching engagement is an opportunity to learn something new about someone, to kind of invest in their lives based on their experiences and help guide and direct. So it plays in with other strengths to sort of help in the coaching process.
Yeah, that's,
Does
you know
that
what, I'm
show
so,
up for
yeah.
you?
Yeah, I was going to make the same connection with coaching, so I'm so glad you brought that up because even with connectedness and Woo, I agree with exactly what you said with Woo, getting to know the new person. And, I'm an extreme extrovert, which you've come to discover. And so for me, I'm going to that program by myself. I'm going to that event. I'm going to network because I get really charged up, right? There's no such thing as strangers, just friends we haven't met yet. And
Yeah.
so thus the Woo, the definition of Woo. But I think with coaching and with my clients, what I've really, really discovered is connectedness is such a huge blessing. And maybe you found that too, because what we're doing is we're walking with our clients in whatever arena of coaching we're doing. I do some transformational coaching along with the Gallup strength based coaching, but helping them discover how the dots connect, right? People might think of their journey or their story, that things are happening, and maybe they feel like those are happening in isolated situations. But there's a theme, right? Those of us that have
Yes.
connectedness, we're like, oh no, maybe this, and oh no, maybe this. And so it's really helpful. And what I've noticed is a lot of my clients, their eyes light up because they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. And it's like, that's okay. That's why I'm here. I'm here to cheer you on and help
Yeah.
you direct into that space where you can now do your own personal work, right? Because sometimes I
Yeah.
think for people, it might be overwhelming if they're going to connect the dots on their own, or big feelings come up like fear and anxiety. And so I think as a coach, I love just coming alongside someone and helping them navigate that and connect those dots. And then as the activator, I take the first step, I take the risk so that they don't have to, right? And I think that kind of helps in that way.
It is interesting, because I've ideation number 6, so lots of
Mm,
ideas, that
yes,
are
yes.
always, popping in my brain, and also futuristic number 7. So when you have that futuristic, like the future is ripe with possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And you can sort of cast that vision for
Mhm.
others. And it is interesting sometimes when we're coaching people how it does produce anxiety, especially if there's a change, a career transition
Mhm.
happening,
Yeah.
where I sort of look at it like, oh, we're in a candy store. Where do you want to go? Like, let's talk about your strengths. Let's not
Mhm.
talk about, yes, your experiences to this point are important. What did you like? What did you not like? But now, if you're changing, what do you want to do next?
Yeah.
Where would you like to go? And we're not so much concerned about what's the specific industry that you want to go into, but if you think about your strengths, what's your best day look like? And
Yeah.
then we can start to plug and play with like, okay, what roles would let you really be in this space of strengths so
Mhm.
that you're having a lot of best days and not
Yeah.
just, especially if you've been dissatisfied or burned
Mhm.
out in your current role, that you really
Right.
want to look at, okay, what are the things that are creating those feelings? And then how do I choose differently? Because sometimes
Yeah.
we can choose what we're comfortable with
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it feels safer. And yet, and we might associate our dissatisfaction with the place
Mhm.
rather than the role that we're
Yeah.
in. And
Yeah.
so then you end up in a new place, but you still have the same feelings because you
Exactly.
haven't like looked at the root cause, maybe, which is
Yep.
more based on your strengths and your experience. You might be more satisfied doing something else. So it can feel
That's
scary,
really
but
cool.
it is also, I don't know, I sort of think of it as can you have a sense of adventure and fun around it, which is probably positivity and woo.
I was going to say, and probably your woo at the same time, right?
Right.
Oh gosh, that's really cool. I think that's a great point that you bring up about career, because I know I've had a lot of conversations with people, and sometimes their first question is, "What job should I do based on my strengths?" I'm like, no, 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 rewind. Because you can maybe do any job, but how are you utilizing your strengths? How are you aiming them? right? It's the name it, claim it, aim it space that Gallup really talks about and helps us understand it and go into deeper places. Because then in every conversation, every situation, if we're focusing on aiming our strengths, it doesn't matter what career it's or what relationship or if there's a challenge. That's another thing people usually say, like, I have these challenges, but I don't know what my strengths have to do with them. I can't use them there.
Yeah.
And then it's them needing to understand that they can, right? So let's use my connectedness again, identifying that, okay, in a conversation where I'm having a struggle with a person, I'm going to obviously think, how can I connect to that person first? And then we can figure out how to solve the situation, right?
Yep.
Maybe it's connecting with positivity, thanks to you there, but just positive comments or affirming comments like, hey, I really appreciated what you did in that project that we worked on together. Hey, I really appreciated the outcome. Thanks for the time that you spent. I really appreciate your insight with that conversation that we had with the staff. Just kind of having those kinds of affirming comments in the beginning and then making that connection, helping the person feel seen. And then we're like, okay, so this is a space that it didn't go well. How can we make it go better? And what do we need to do differently? Right. So I think maybe with you and I having responsibility, we hold that highly. Right. And it's important we make those connections. We both have connectedness and responsibility. So I think between understanding what career people need to do and then the conflicts, which sometimes is their conflict, what career, people can use these in a variety of areas, right?
They can. And I think the other part is just, if you think about your strengths and what you're thinking, it's a piece of maybe what you value and what's important. So as we're looking at different organizations, every organization has its own sort of culture. And so as part of your investigation of where you want to go next is it even a culture fit? So when I'm working with teams, it's interesting to see as we begin to take assessments throughout the team, often we'll see one or two strengths that seem to be repeated, not in the same order exactly, but they're showing up in people's top 10. So if I'm working with a firm and all of a sudden now we're saying, oh, like responsibility is maybe a theme that everyone has somewhere in their top 10 to 12. So then you start to see like, okay, that's a value of the organization and they have subconsciously hired to that value.
Interesting.
And it's playing out in that way. So often, I'll have clients and they'll say, we want a unicorn. They like to say, we want somebody who's not like us, because they're looking at strengths and they want to be really well-rounded. So they, and I will say, would a unicorn want to work here? I just, to be honest, sometimes I think that's great. But if you want a unicorn to be here, are you going to value what the unicorn brings? Because the unicorn is going to do things differently. And when we are different, it takes more intentionality and it takes more work or, focus and the willingness to let things not be the same. So it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But for the unicorn to thrive, you can't then have the unicorn and say, I want you to be a horse.
I guess I'm going to honestly say I'm a unicorn. Because you know what, the conversation we had earlier about a team member in terms of how I was understanding his strengths. And I came, I moved to India, but I've lived in the US and Canada for 48 plus years of my life. Even though I was born here, I do feel like I've come back and as a unicorn because I am so extremely different. So I need to make sure that how I run my company, who I hire, usually I hire them and then we go through the strengths so I can figure out, okay, where do they line up? How are we doing? What's going on? But I do remember a distinct situation where my activator was like blowing, like there was smoke coming out of my ears, I think at that point, because I was working with my teammate and he has intellection and he is so talented and so gifted in what he does. That's why he's on our team at Seema Global. However, I was giving him some assignments and I'm like, why aren't they coming back? Why don't we have the information? I asked a question, what is happening? And it didn't dawn on me that I was so much in activator mode and I disregarded the fact that he has intellection. And intellection says that he's going to sit on it for a little bit. He's going to ponder it. He's going to look at the options. He's going to take time. Many of those terms aren't in my language or in my behaviors because I get so excited. But so I need people like that, right? And I think that's what I'm learning. Like when you talk about hiring from that side, that they want to hire a unicorn. It's kind of like, well, what if the owner of the business is a unicorn, and how do we then make sure our team members work accordingly? And then also appreciating the cultural context that I live in, where right now I'm actually the only certified or Gallup Certified Strengths Coach here in the city that I live in. And so in India, we have 185 Gallup Certified Strengths Coaches. And I'm hoping to kind of, get into some conversation and connect with them as well. But I think it's interesting. I'm the only one here, which some days it feels like an uphill battle. So for me, I love having these strengths, but I have to really comprehend and understand in deep ways what my team members have so that I'm not bulldozing them and I'm not forcing them to go faster and leaving them in the dust, right? It needs to be a team effort. So it's been a really great learning curve. And I think since getting certified, I can honestly say that I'm coming to appreciate so many of the other strengths because they're making sense in ways that I wouldn't have normally gone after, right? And so it just kind of helps. So in your team, with your consulting company, how many team members do you have, and how does that play out with strengths, and how does that work over by you?
Well, it's just an interesting, the strengths piece I tend to work with a lot of engineers. So
Okay.
I guess I would be the unicorn also in that situation. Not a lot of people on my team are, so I lead with the relationship building domain, and obviously like positivity, woo. I tend to be the more enthusiastic sort of laughing. I'm always laughing about something, and I would say most of my team tends to be much more strategic thinking and quieter and circumspect, maybe.
I could kind of relate.
Yes. So it is challenging. I think that's where strengths allows us to sort of connect, and because exactly what you're saying is you learn to appreciate those differences, and it takes it allows you to sort of I guess create a bit of separation where before, when am I taking something personally that's really not about me, but it's more about their style and how they go about it. And so now we can have a conversation. I mean, when you're having a strengths conversation, you can really say, so exactly what we're doing here, this is how my positivity shows up. This is how woo is showing for me. What strength are you utilizing right now? Tell me about intellection. Tell me, how does that work for you? And it just becomes this pathway of sort of like, how do we have a conversation where we're curious and open and trying to learn more about what our team members or others are bringing to the table, or how they're even approaching it. Like, and they're going to see different things. So I think the power of strengths is the facet that I will see in a situation is slightly different than what you're going to see, is different than what our other team members are going to see. And together we'll sort of get the whole, but it is powerful to kind of think about in that way of, if we think about a room and we're looking in the front window, we see whatever we can see. But if we walked around the house and looked in the back window, we would have a different view. We would see more. So recognizing like we're only seeing part of any given situation. So, and that's probably connectedness, right? What's the holistic? What's the
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And I feel like this, I like what you said. So what we're doing right now is we've had a conversation about just the entry point, right? We've kind of just given people a peek into the house of strengths, so to speak.
Yes.
And we're not trying to be salesy, but clearly both of us have woo. So we want people to get involved and get engaged with their own strengths and really understand who they are from the inside out. And and why do I say that a lot in my conversations with people? Because of belief, right? We have very strong core values that are important to us. And this isn't the only, sorry, Gallup, this isn't the only resource or tool that's out there for people to really understand who they are. But honestly, it's a super valuable one. So just in our closing comments before we, wrap this up, I'm thinking, I don't know that I said it out loud in the beginning, but the reason I took this journey into strengths initially was to really address, I had toxic strength and it was causing a lot of deep anger in me. And I didn't understand why the anger was there. I didn't understand what was necessarily causing it. And so what I did was journey into that space of, getting counseling, walking through my anger issues, listing them on paper. Is there a common theme? And honestly, in that, I remember one significant moment where I wrote down 54 things I was angry about within the course of 10 minutes. And that then led to understanding the toxic strength, which led to my husband sharing with me about StrengthsFinder. And then I was able to, I took the assessment and it gave me language right away. And probably my activator had something to do with the fact that I was going to be determined to implement right away. And so it gave me language as to what were the things that I was angry about that were kind of useless. It helped me understand my expectations where they were unrealistic. It gave me language in terms of what direction to move in and how to aim those strengths in those moments, right? So if friends would say, oh, you're really good at networking, I'm not good at that, I could say, well, you know what? I have woo and I have connectedness. And so those help me really. And then the activator helps me just give the courage to step into something that's new and different. So it allowed me to have increased confidence, deal with my anger issues, and just allowed me to feel so free. So having those core values of wanting to be able to live into them authentically, ta-da, belief shows up in my whole thing, right? So that's why I took it and why it spurred me on into stepping into the house, if you will, to use your analogy, and to really look around and figure out where do these strengths belong and how can I really understand them in different facets of my life.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been a coach this year for 10 years. So it's kind of
congratulations.
it's kind of exciting to kind of look back on the journey. And my husband actually, he was in seminary and they took the Gallup assessment. And so he brought it home. And so I took the assessment in 2009, and it wasn't till 2014 then I was like, oh, they have this whole coaching thing. I should, my background is HR. So I think I love it because it just gives a common language to bring us together, to help us understand one another. And I think what I see so often is like we're just miscommunicating. Like we can both be on we're just missing what the other is saying. So I like it as a tool for that. And for myself, it just has given me a lot of self-confidence about, this is what I do well, naturally, and I can work intentionally in this space and do it even better. And so when you know what you do well, when you go into a situation, it can give you sort of a much more non-anxious presence. You can sort of say, I know what I bring to the table. And I know when, like the best things for me to step into, and also the things to say, like, I'm not the best person for that. And it doesn't take away from whom I am, like, and what I do bring. And so I think I like it from that perspective of just like, how do we be more confident humans in who we were created to be, and that and really value that uniqueness in each of us, and then the power of us all coming together, which is probably connectedness. Like, how do we all, like work together? And I mean, I'm a collaborator. So for me, it's like, why would I do anything by myself? Like, let's do it. Let's do it together.
Let's do it together. Just like our tagline for our company says, growing forward together. And that's the beautiful thing. Of these strengths. And, I think some people say that it's always a professional thing, right? To know your strengths, you're using it at work. And it's like, honestly, I have so many friendships where I have to sort of remember, like, okay, these are my strengths. Oh, those are her strengths, especially if it's a friend who's done her strengths assessment. And then if she's acting out of character, then I'm thinking, oh boy, it's her this strength coming up right now, or it's another one that's rearing its head. And I'm not going to name any of them in case somebody knows that I'm sharing their story. I'm not. It's just understanding the variety of strengths that are out there, and if they're not tempered, right, it even affects our friendships, our family relationships. In the last year, actually 2 years, no, 3 years, even before I got certified, I've been able to work with couples. And man, that is so much fun, because I know we said we were wrapping this up, but I just thought of this idea that when we work with couples, the wife does the assessment, then the husband wants to do the assessment, then I have an assessment with them together, right? A conversation about matching, right? Like, how do these strengths interact with one another? And sometimes the couples think, like, one spouse will say, oh, we're fighting about this, and I look at their strengths and I'm like, no, actually, you're right because you're doing this, and you're right because you're doing. Isn't that great when both husband and wife want to be right?
Yes,
we can be.
That's right. It's the power of two. Like, how do we come together and combine our strengths, right? To be more than they were apart. And it is true. There is the dark side of each, right? Like, they can help us or they can hinder us. So like in all of these strengths, when we're talking about, there definitely is that side of oh, this strength is getting in my way. Like, I'm, my responsibility, I have learned to say, let me check on that. Like, I don't just say yes right away, because I want to say yes, because I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that. And then all of a sudden I'm very overcommitted. That would be sort of that. How does responsibility begin to hinder me? Because I've overcommitted, and now I have this commitment that I'm not going to let go of. And so it's,
oh man,
good.
Yes, I know. Yes, I do. This is so
you have it number two. So I'm like, if you have responsibility,
yes, and I have input as my number 6. So I take it in. Oh boy, here we go. We could seriously go on for another 3 hours, but I don't think people want to listen to that. So we should come up with another collaboration idea when I'm stateside, and have some more conversations about this. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes, I'm totally in. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, you know what? We'll make sure that all of your contact information is at the bottom of the screen, and then my stuff too, that we can connect with whoever, wherever, when we're here. And, folks, if you have any questions, definitely check out Katy. Make sure you're following her on LinkedIn as well, and Kloosterman Consulting, and along with Seema Global Consulting. And we would love to answer any more questions and maybe have more conversations with more people in the room, because it would just be so much more fun, says the connectedness and the woo in me, and probably the same for you as well, right?
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you, Katy. We will catch up soon, and let's see where we can go next from here.
Sounds good.